Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. It was all kicking off last night over the CDL operator skins that are apparently already getting prepared for the upcoming Modern Warfare 3 title release later this year. This sounds good on paper, but it turns out, especially the OpTic designer, very frustrated of the lack of creative freedom being offered. It seems like we're taking some steps forwards and then even more steps backwards. Very much enjoyed to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. Plenty to get into. First of all, wanted to mention another classic here from Infinity Ward, saying that a classic map is coming to Modern Warfare 2 pretty soon. So this would be, to be fair, it's been super weird for me why we haven't seen any of the OG Modern Warfare 2 maps arrive into this game. I don't know whether their plan was to actually do the 2-year cycle of this game, and therefore the second year was going to be all the Modern Warfare 2 maps making their glorious return. And okay, some of them would have been viable for competitive, and even, yeah, the likes of High Rise and even Sky Rise, I think, when it was brought back in Advanced Warfare, as the jetpack version was used in competitive back in Advanced Warfare in the later half of that title. But it's just taken so long for anything like this to happen that the season is over by the time that we've, potentially going to get any classic maps back in Modern Warfare 2. Now, what the developers deem a classic map is a bit of a question, right? Are they going to look back at Ghost and think, damn, Stonehaven, yeah, that was a real fan favorite map. Let's bring that straight back into the game. And these are some of the comments here. Like, there's power in the nostalgia of bringing those back, and it's a broken record, but it's a balance between the brand new stuff and something that's familiar. I thought this comment was quite funny as well. Even when we do new maps, people will say, oh, I didn't like this, the other map was way better. It feels almost like it takes time to get used to something. Suddenly 2 years later, people are like, oh man, Hackney Yard was a great map, whereas during the launch they said that was a piece of crap. So I think it's kind of funny, this does exist in part, right? People do look back at, let's say Tuscan, for example. The start of last season, I think anyone would have told you Tuscan was a phenomenal map, but looking back at last year's Tuscan in Vanguard, you think, damn, actually, that was one of the better maps you've had in recent Call of Duty memory. So it is a thing, but is Hackney Yard a good map? No, it wasn't liked at the time. It looks, the funny thing about Hackney Yard to me is you look at it on paper, the way it's laid out, the way you look at it, and it feels like it should be good, but I just think it played terrible for at least the majority of the game modes. I haven't changed my opinion on that, so I thought that was pretty funny, really. And it's definitely related to what we're going to be getting into here in a second. Firstly, though, from Jacob Hale, he's put together what the Champs Bracket would currently look like if the season standings stayed as they are. So FaZe versus Rokkr, 1st versus 8th. Thieves, I think, is 4th versus 5th in sublaners, I think is how it stands right now. OpTic 2nd versus 7th in Boston, and an Ultra 3rd, I think, in Seattle are 6th right now. So that's how it would presently stand going into the World Championship. This is almost surely destined to change after Major 5. That's the most likely probability that some things change around, but still, OpTic versus Boston is very possible. FaZe versus Rokkr is very possible, and of course, this is how the bracket would lie in terms of the winner of, let's say FaZe versus Thieves could be your round 2 game. OpTic Ultra could be your round 2 game. That makes a lot of sense, but of course there could be upsets involved. And just to look on the loser's side, because we're going to discuss Surge later today, they would, if they were to lose to Ultra, they would drop down to probably play Boston. So it's interesting how this could go. But yeah, man, it's a really exciting bracket if this was to be the case. And it's coming up in not too far from now. But as I say, there could be changes before we get to that point. Let's dive into some of this blueprint discussion then. So yesterday, as the COD League come out with a bundle fit for a king, introducing the CDL 2023 Champs Pack. So this is, we've talked a lot lately about the state of esports, the state of the CDL, how they can actually make, this profitable in the future. And a lot of the way that it can be done and should be done is through really cool cosmetics, such as this. Obviously, in other esports, you've got stuff like this that then gets filtered down to the teams. The teams and the players get a cut of it. In CSGO, for the Major, they have the stickers. They're all, the teams get a cut of that. For Valorant, they always do a Champs Pack, which is all filtered down between all the teams and the players. I believe a guaranteed part of that money to go into their pocket as well. And also, you could do some crowdfunding where part of this money goes to the World Championship prize pool, but Activision don't seem so keen to do that, right? I will say this does feel like a bit of a missed opportunity when there's an entire bundle around a king, right? We talked recently about the Nick Mercs and the Tim the Tatman things in the game. They've made a bundle with a crown on and all this stuff. Like, they could have done this for Scump, could they not? They could have at least tried to have it somewhat inspired by Scump, but it's just, do the people that designed this know that Scump exists? I don't really know. Just because when you're doing the Nick Mercs and Tim the Tatman thing, and then you're releasing a king bundle, and there's just no Scump references even, it just feels a little bit strange to me, and, I guess it will sell reasonably really well. These, though, were the team packs which were finally recently released into the game. I was definitely concerned over the last few months where it was rumoured that Infinity Ward would nerf the FaZe into the grounds and these would become irrelevant, but it's really cool that we saw this finally. The team's actually able to create their own blueprints and camos from the ground up for these weapons. Would be ideal if they were used across other guns as well, if there was a TAC version also, but this is definitely a good step for the teams to be able to provide their own stuff and ones that they sell, because they can actually design them and make them cool and cosmetic. Because fundamentally, if the CDL stuff in the game, the operators, the camos, was the best stuff, it just is a win for everyone, especially around the future and the health of the competitive scene, because these will sell better, therefore the teams can actually make some revenue that way, and it potentially can filter down to the players as well. And there's more casual players that have no idea about the CDL come across these camos and skins and operator skins. They think, damn, that's pretty cool, like where's he got that from? And it turns out it's a league one, it turns out it's, you know, potentially related to a particular team. People will see a lot of them in the game itself. They'll think, okay, damn, what's that OpTic Texas one? Like, you know, what's going on here? Maybe I'll check it out, see what they are. And then Activision win, the developers win, and then, you know, it obviously helps everyone at the end of the day. So that'll be the ideal scenario, and we like the fact that there's a lot of cosmetic choices that teams are able to deliver on. So comparing this to the operator skins we've seen over the last couple of years, I believe these are the ones that are presently in the game. We've seen very similar ones over the last few titles. These are, you know, by comparison, very dull and boring, right? I mean, it's just the colors of the team with the logo on the center, and that's basically all you've got. And the developers, or I guess they've had some designers design these for them, but what it's basically been is it's just the same thing, and you change the colors and you change the logo on the chest. That's in this year's game. This was the ones back in Cold War, right, when it was again just the same thing with a very different color, like just a very marginal different color and a different logo. And that's what we've had from an operator perspective. And, you know, okay, I saw people when I was playing Cold War running around with a fair few of these skins, but they didn't sell particularly well, I imagine, compared to what they could have done if they were actually well designed and had more cosmetic freedom, shall we say. So we then fast forward to today. Jacob Hell says, Core Legend League franchises are already in the process of designing custom operator skins and cosmetics for Modern Warfare 3. This on paper, really great stuff, right? Modern Warfare 3 is several months away. They're already making a design for it. Awesome stuff. It's going to be another step forward to what we presently have. Turns out, though, not necessarily the case. Jacob Bell quickly afterwards says in the replies, to temper expectations from what I have seen, there is a very limited amount of creative freedom with these skins. So it seems to me that they've almost told the team designers, hey, we used to do this and design them ourselves. How about you design them for us, but you comply to exactly the set of specifications we give you? So this was the tweet here from Aaron Create, OpTic's designer, and I can really feel the frustration from creative guys like Aaron that want to design really cool stuff here for in-game purchases and all this, and, you know, designed, obviously he does the merchandise for Rich and Lonely and bows and stuff like this as well, I believe. So as he says, I knew they would say this but not mention their dog guidelines, because decided to also tweet this out that they're in the process of doing the custom skins and cosmetics, and he actually mentions the guidelines. Can't edit the straps, can't edit the goggles, can't edit the pants, no texture, no patterns. Go F yourself, he says, to eventually the developers. Now, so this is a Sledgehammer game, right, coming up, whether Infinity Ward are at all involved, whether this is a straight up Activision-led thing, but it's just super frustrating, right? And even as Aaron Craig goes on to say here, Benchain seems like no textures, no patterns. On the straps and goggles, definitely not. He put them on. This is the frustrating thing for him, is that he submitted his designs, what he wants to see from an OpTic perspective, and they came back to him and said, no, we can't have this. You've got to remove this, mate. Unlucky. Not sure if the pattern I have on the chest will make it or not. So it's just annoying, right, as a fan of this community, that we are taking steps forward with the blueprints to try and make really cool stuff that can represent the teams well, and the teams can have the coolest stuff in the game, which is the ideal scenario for everyone. And yet, like, do the developers want to make the game bad? At some point, it almost feels like sabotage, right? When there's things that are being done to take steps forward, and they're being, like, you know, deliberately denied by whoever's making the calls. Now, maybe from a actual putting it in the game perspective, maybe the patterns make it more challenging, but, like, if you're not going to really give any creative freedom, why even ask the teams to do it in the first place? Just design them yourself like you used to, because they're going to look the same anyway, probably, with very minor alterations. And even Aaron Craig goes on to say this, working with Halo 343 and Rocket League, for example, is a dream compared to working on the CDL cosmetics. So, you know, just shows by comparison there. I think even Rainbow Six has done stuff like this as well, where teams get to design their own stuff and the creative freedom is very much given. And yes, we did see the blueprints come into place But on the operator skins, I mean, like, look at these LA ones. There's nothing going on, and it's probably not going to be too dissimilar. So no changes to the straps or goggles. I guess they're going to be just straight up colours, whatever they are usually. Whatever pattern you want to do on the chest, that's been denied as well. And as Doug sent to Martin says, Call of Duty needs to allow creative teams to be creative in processes involving IP, intellectual property. That's the bread and butter, the nectar for a lot of teams potentially. So sad. And, you know, I agree. Teams like the Florida Mutineers, for example, they've got some really cool elements of their branding. Yes, okay, it might change Miami Heretics or whatever, but, you know, there's some really cool stuff there. And some of their camos have been the best that I've enjoyed over the last couple of years to see in the game. But when you can't express any of that stuff in the title itself, it just becomes super frustrating. Now, it did also mention that they were also working on designing like blueprints or potentially camos as well, not just these operator skins. And maybe they will have more freedom there, but it's not exactly an ideal scenario. And just, you know, it combines with this that we saw just yesterday with Team LDLC. If you guys have been around a while, you might know LDLC from CSGO. They probably were in other esports as well, but they were certainly in Call of Duty briefly during the Black Ops 3 days. I believe they made the World Championship that year. They had a team of like Niall and Watson. I think Shane was even on there. I forget the fourth on the roster, unfortunately. But yeah, a pretty decent team. They made a good run to qualify. And it's organisations like this that over the last couple of years, a lot of them have shut down, either left esports or something like that. And we know that there's a very similar trajectory for many of the current organisations in the CDL. Los Angeles Guerrillas, they're getting out of it. Minnesota Rokkr might want to do some sort of merger. We're not sure exactly what the future holds there. We know that Florida Mutineers are looking to merge with Heretics and become the Miami Heretics. Obviously, we know what happened with OpTic Texas and Envoy over the last couple of years. So it's a big issue that these teams struggle to create, especially when you've got to build a brand from the ground up, create some sort of brand identity, have some sort of valid revenue sources to come into these teams. And when you reduce the creative freedom that the teams have to present that stuff in the in-game cosmetics that actually can create a positive outcome for the teams, then it just, you know, drags everything down further than it needs to be. So I don't really know why this is the case. I'll have to have some explanation from their side as to why there is so much limits, it seems, on the creative freedom these guys can enjoy. But also frustration, of course, on the OpTic side especially. And just one final thing to mention, I thought was pretty funny looking from Parasite here on Crimsix and JoeDeceives before he even turned 18, looking at some of these texts that Crim brought up back in the day. Kind of, well, effectively thinking this guy was blatantly hacking. Turns out he's in the league now, and he's actually just rather good. But very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.
Karen dead.
They don't want off this, by the way.
It's a pro too.
More beans on me. I think I hear him beans.
I don't have bottom bed.
Laying down
I
beans.
didn't need Cammy, babe.
Beans dead.
Yo,
Didn't
pass
carry
over, pass over, pass over.
Come on,
You
bitch.
what's
I
your
have
rep?
time.
I want to carry him on me.
Push in the bed,
I got you.
Nice, I have all
This,
of it.
I'm disrespecting
Third,
this guy.
third,
On old.
Last doesn't know, just get out.
On old really become
Can I
slam
have all
that
of
shit
it, I have
thing.
all of it.
Yeah, you can go rogue. You
Yeah,
push
I'm
up,
back.
you
One on old.
I have all of it.
Oh, I just couldn't believe he killed you that fast.
Yeah, I died fast.
Give me top gas.
One's in laundry.
Top gas.
Laundry.
I'm in the right.
Alright, one might be top gas.
One more probably laundry. Tommy laundry.